I think we'll get a better sense after the elections are over in the United States. Because I think from the Indian perspective, it's reasonably clear Mr. Modi, as the Prime Minister, has given a broad indication about how he proposes to look at this bilateral. Now, the kind of continuity we had between Mr. Bush as the President and Mr. Obama as the President, there have been some disjunctions in Trump 1.0. For instance, we know that India and the United States had a certain amount of tension over the trade protocol, and the symbol of that has become the Harley-Davidson motorcycle. We are also aware that the United States had expressed its own displeasure in relation to the India-Russia military supplies agreement, particularly in relation to certain anti-missile systems. We are aware that India and the United States have a very, very divergent perception about Iran. So the way in which I think the next US president, whether it is Mr. Trump or somebody else, is going to look at these issues would give us a sense, because there is a lot of potential. But hypothetically, if Mr. Trump is back, actually the likelihood seems to be fairly high, and he decides that he is going to pursue whether it's Russia and the missile system that India proposes to acquire, or Iran, and therefore the brittleness in the bilateral will increase. And I think that could lead to a certain amount of a cul-de-sac kind of situation as far as the bilateral and the potential is concerned. But my sense is that India will stay the course, that we have put certain markers about how we would like to proceed with the bilateral. Whether we have the staying power or not would depend, I think, on how India's own economic indicators are going to play out over the next few years, because at the moment there seems to be a fair amount of a domestic challenge for India in sustaining both, I would say, its growth rates and being able to attract investments, which I think has been a slightly elusive kind of objective as far as the present government is concerned.
You see, the first and a major part as far as Indo-US defense relations are concerned is the strategic congruence. Now, strategic congruence is important so that the defense forces and the military, they get the strategic direction from the higher leadership. And you have the understanding which has been developed between the US President Donald Trump and our Prime Minister Mr. Narendra Modi. I think this has developed given the strategic direction to the relationship, which is also evident from the second 2+2 dialogue which will be held in the month of December in the United States. So these 2+2 dialogues involves the defense and the foreign ministers of both sides coming together for engagement, and this is this entails a strategic congruence. Another aspect which is the Indo-Pacific. Now both countries have got a common view and a common perspective of the Indo-Pacific, freedom of the seas, no interference in international trade. This has given a momentum to the relations, defense aspect as well, due to the maritime dimension of the same. Now the next pillar, I would say, and one of the strong pillars, military relations, is the exercises. Now, of course, there is a wider number of activities which happen, but to my mind, the military exercises, particularly Malabar, you have a new exercise which is now being talked about, Tiger Triumph or multi-service. So this has given a very strong pillar, a very strong message, because this is building two things. One is interoperability, and second is the lessons learning from each other, which is a very strong pillar of this. The other aspect is the defense trade and technology initiative, which is there, which promises to build a very collaborative sort of a technology and trade relationship between the two countries, which is, I think, will be a very important development. Let's get on to the next pillar, which is defense sales. Now, particularly from the United States is providing a large number of important strategic defense platforms to India, such as the P-8I, such as the C-17 and the C-130J. The final pillar is, I think, the defense industry cooperation, which is growing in leaps and bounds. You have a number of companies now who have established a strong footprint in India, be it Boeing, Lockheed Martin and others. They have made joint partnership with the Indian defense companies, both public and private, and they want to have a strong footprint in India, which is, I think, the final pillar.